This episode is brought to you by Hardscaper.com. The Hardscaper mission is to empower industry professionals with the skills, inspiration, and confidence they need to take their businesses to new heights. Struggling with training programs for your team? Looking for helpful tips to build a better company? Subscribe today to gain access to hours of interactive on-demand Hardscape construction and business courses for free. Check out Hardscaper.com. You're listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hardscape Growth Show. I'm your host, Alex from TechnoBlock, and today we're joined by Charlie Kerrigan from V.I.L Landscaping and the host of his own podcast, the Hard Lessons Podcast. V.I.L Landscaping, I want to know where that name came from because I have a feeling it's pretty funny.
So yeah, I get that a lot, to be honest. I was in grade 4, thought it was brilliant. Very important lawns is what it stemmed from. And everyone in our town, Oakville, Facebook groups started knowing us as that. So as we're scaling and growing, we kind of got stuck with it.
So in grade 4, you started mowing lawns, named the business. It wasn't just you mowing lawns. You made a company, you made a name, V.I.L Landscaping. And how many years ago was that?
That was 8 years ago. It'd be now, which is crazy to think, but yeah, eight years ago, just knocking on doors and just started started something to keep busy throughout the summer, and then it wasn't too serious until really COVID happened, 2020 there, where I really put my head down and there's short-term goals that I wanted to obtain, and wanted to get to. And that's kind of what kept me going at the start.
So what were some of those goals?
So it was, like I said, short-term. So like toys and stuff for fun, whether it was like bikes or snowmobiles or dirt bikes, like whatever it was, short term. And then I really had to, I guess, learn the hard way that once you get to those goals, there comes a plateau if you don't really know your purpose and why the bigger picture, right? If you're always chasing after those goals, and once you get to the top of the mountain, then what? And really learning to what the bigger picture is, number one, but also number two, like enjoying the process, the day to day of, the business, learning, eating shit. It's all part of the fun.
So you started cutting grass as a kid, grade 4. I'll repeat because that's impressive on its own. And then you start. I guess you finish school, or you decide you're done with school, whatever that was, and you decide to keep going more and more into the landscape industry, and you're making money and you're using it to buy all the little toys and things that are the reason why you started in the first place. You just wanted some extra spending cash. You wanted to have, a fun lifestyle, which is great, especially when you're young. But then you start realizing, okay, you're doing a lot of work, and like the toys only take you so far in terms of like rewarding, fulfilling, that kind of stuff. And that's where you realize, like, okay, maybe I need to take this a little bit more seriously. Not that you weren't taking it seriously, but like I need more of a plan. I can't just like, what's the next fancy car I'm going to buy?
Yes, 100%. And it was always like, a bigger mower or the next truck or whatever. And it kept going like that. And then once I would get those goals, I would almost slow down and not be as passionate or as driven to whatever I was wanting to do, or just day to day. So I guess I kind of like slowed down when I was in between those I guess shorter term goals, and I was fairly young at the time, but just like learning why are you really doing this? And it's not it's not just for the faint of heart. It's a gladiator sport, running any business, not just being a contractor, but like figuring out what the why was, and a bigger picture was important, and really when the switch flipped of like, okay, like we're not good off ground.
And was that something that you had, like you came to that conclusion entirely yourself, or were you like sitting around talking with people and then someone kind of got in your ear like, well, maybe you need to think a little bit more big picture to make this more interesting for you?
No, it it came to me myself, and just I was getting around the wrong people, and getting a little bit off track of chasing more pleasures, whether it's like looking forward to every weekend, or going out and drinking and this and that. It was really getting off track of where I needed to go. And if I looked at the bigger picture, would realize that of having to stay consistent in the day-to-day grind of doing stuff, getting stuff done, continuously getting better. And it really opened my eyes. It was just a cycle of I guess I got addicted to always getting better once I figured out the bigger picture. Short term, it was just whatever's fun, whatever's fancy, whatever's shiny. And it's just a loop of spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm. Well, what does getting addicted to getting better look like for you? Like, what are the things you're comparing yourself to?
To who I was yesterday. Always, like personally, but also the business, learning, getting around people who have been doing this their whole life, who have the knowledge. The knowledge is all out there. No one's smarter or dumber than someone. It's just how you've accessed the knowledge, whether it's through books or videos or podcasts. So learning and improving, surrounding myself by a great team, and what's involved to get to the next level. It's not, to get to 10 million is not what we're doing. Like, just as an example, $10 million business. What we're doing today is not going to get us there. So looking at what needs to happen and what needs to be in place for a business like that, or that's just as an example, but slowly putting all those pieces together. So we're able to get to next levels. And that's just a small example.
So, I guess what are some of the goals that you have set for yourself now that are giving you that drive? Like, because to say you're better than yesterday, I get the concept, but like there have to be specific things that you're trying to reach, because you could learn about, I don't know, photography, and you could get better at photography, but that's not really driving your ambitions. And having gotten to know you a little bit, like you're laser focused on where you want to go and what you want to do. So what are some of the goals, and what's your process for saying, I want to go there? Here's how I'm going to get there, so that you can stay consistent. Because I think that's one of the challenges of staying consistent every day, is you need to have a very clear, like, this is the path I'm on, and these are the steps I need to reach in order to ultimately get to the goal.
Yeah. So understanding the steps and breaking it down, learning to say no has been huge, because chasing squirrels as an entrepreneur and all the stuff that comes up, going in a bunch of different directions, being optimistic, that's learning to say no. That's been massive to getting to the goals, and then surrounding myself with the right people, between having the right team in place or mentors, to get to the bigger goal of having a business that really runs itself and continues to grow, keeping quality at a very high level. Seeing, especially in this industry of landscaping, but contractors as well, businesses as they scale, they lose that quality when it was just 1, 2, 3 crews. And then also design, build, and construction, whether with these custom projects. It's not just lawn mowing or weed spraying in terms of scaling. So the systems, the processes, and the people in place to get there is really what we're looking at and focusing on.
So you want to build an awesome design build company that runs itself, has an incredible reputation, delivers quality, has great people who are there every day and continuing to grow, because the business will continue to grow with or without your direct involvement, is basically what I'm taking away there.
100% bang on. And also instilling like that vision and the goals within the team and within the guys, the culture, and building an environment where they can also grow and they can also get better. If I'm not growing the business or driving it, I don't want these highly skilled and highly competent guys to be standing still the rest of their life. I want them to always be getting better as well. So
it sounds great, and it's ambitious, and you're obviously well on your way, because now you're at a point where you have 15 full-time guys, you're running 4 full-time crews, you're not doing a lot of lawn cutting anymore. You're mostly on the design build side of things today. So that's a transition that you've done. What are some of the challenges that you have already faced, like specific ones, and maybe they're the ones that led to you learning how and when to say no? But what are some of the specific challenges that you have faced or continue to face that you need to overcome in order to continue on this journey of building the business the way that you want to?
Yeah, one big eye-opening lesson or hard knock was taking on too much and offering too many services. And just starting out, you just want whatever work you can get. But going back to learning to say no, really dialing in on what you're good at, what your crews are trained to do, and the expensive equipment that you have just to do those jobs. When I see guys doing Christmas lights, lawn mowing, and also throwing pools in the ground, there's no way those crews are going to get as efficient as they need to be profitable on those projects, but also as good, and limiting the all the fuck ups that come, and sure they happen, but when you're doing a completely different thing every other day, that's really what hurt us. So saying no, dialing into what we are really, really good at. Like, we're not cutting lawns this year. We're doing the whole 9 yards for your property every single week. And that's it, because our guys are trained to provide the best quality, not just mow a lawn. And that's just talking like a better maintenance crew, but that's one example and where we're pivoting. Yeah.
And those decisions, like there's risk involved. I mean, obviously, like there's risk involved with just running a business, period, but there's risk involved with making that kind of decision. Like, what information or what data or how do you come to the conclusion that like this is the right decision to make for the business? Because on a high level, everything you're saying makes 100% sense. But when you're in the day to day, A, sometimes it's not as obvious, and B, it's kind of the devil kind of thing. Like I know cutting grass brings in X amount of money per year. I know I have this many people. I know I have this equipment. I have these lease payments and finance payments I have to make. So at least this coming in, this going out, we're surviving. What are you looking at that's making it obvious for you or less risky for you to say, I'm chopping off this part of the business?
The opportunity for our guys to get really good at something outweighs that risk in my eyes. And really good at something to be efficient, to then be profitable at it. And our margins are thin already as it is in the landscape business. To do whatever we can to maximize on that and also compete in an already very, very competitive market. If we're here to be the best, that decision has to be made in my eyes, and looking at those few things, your profit margin and who you're competing with. And in the spring, Mark Bradley says this, in the spring, you should be printing money, but your business should still be able to be profitable in a slower time or recession, because you're so dialed in with your numbers, and it all goes back to having efficient guys knowing what they're doing.
But I like one of the things you said there, which was like, if we're supposed to be the best, then these are the decisions that we need to make. I think that's really an important lesson for anybody to learn as quickly as possible, is really identify like what is the true North Star for your business? What is that guiding principle? Like, if we're here to be the best landscape design build company in Oakville, and that's what you want to do, then we need to make the decisions that the best design build company would be making. The best design build company would not be out here cutting grass for whatever, $20 an hour or something. They would be out there building crazy things at $175 per man hour. Right?
Exactly. And the scale that we're trying to get to, or is not trying to get to, but is required to be the best, the guys have to be so good at it. You look at how complicated the outdoor kitchens or water features or some pool and pavilion backyard installs are getting. These guys are just doing this every other week or every other day. There's no way it ever work out.
Do you have a hard time finding people to work on your team?
like yes and no. Like we struggle with labor, like every other contractor, it seems. But at this point, we've really got a fairly dialed in crew, with our foremans being super experienced and knowing really what they're doing, and hardworking crew members. It's we've got it to a good point right now. But going back super quick, one thing to add is like it hasn't been as much of a concern, this whole efficiency thing, and it hasn't been as big of a deal and emphasized with these last few years, being a contractor through COVID, because you can do whatever you want and make some sort of money. As long as you have work boots, you'll make some money. But now it's really, really emphasizing these slower times for a lot of guys, how important it is to really dial in and figure out what we're doing here.
Yeah, when the demand was outpacing the supply, what that meant was we could charge whatever we wanted, and as long as you answer the phone, you stand a good chance of getting the job. Demand is dialed back now in some markets significantly. So what can you do? You need to be able to squeeze where you can while still staying in business and not sacrificing profit. So you need to be able to optimize efficiency. So I like where your head's at in terms of understanding the importance of doing that. I was curious from the labor standpoint if it's challenging, because I mean, if anybody who's just listening, they don't see you right now, but if they're watching, they see you're a younger guy. You've been running the business for 8 years, but starting in grade 4, that means you're still a young guy. And sometimes it's hard to get the skilled guys to come work for you when they might have some skepticism about, like, okay, well, is this business going to still be around? Like, is this kid going to still be here? Kind of thing. And that's kind of what I'm wondering is that a challenge that you've faced, or is one that you don't face too much simply because the business is running well and the money's coming in and you're fine. Like you're paying the guys and you've built a good reputation, so you're fine. Like, what's your reality?
So like money talks, and that's how we get them here, to be honest, paying them good. But to keep that, and to keep a business running where you're paying very, very high wages, the guys need to understand what it takes to get paid that. So LMN has been huge with this, helping them have scorecards so they know how they're doing. They know the revenue per hour that they're producing and their crew is producing. So when someone comes and asks for a raise, I just ask them, how are we going to get more efficient to increase your revenue per hour? And they understand like the average in our industry labor percent is around 25%, 25, 30%. So they're able to see, and I have it open as possible for them. They know what they're producing. They know what their crew is producing. And if they want to get better, the resources are here, and I have no problem paying them more if they're producing more.
If they're producing more. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. Do you get any pushback on that, or like, because it's so black and white, like, okay, well, I guess that's the rules of the game?
A little bit of pushback, and those guys, they don't stick around too long. For the guys who understand it, it's an awesome environment for them to win and take as much out of it as they can. For the guys who can't really wrap their head around it, or it doesn't make sense to them, or they don't want to take the time to understand it, then it's not a good fit. But to answer your question, just getting them in the door, like paying them what they should be. It's not easy work. Paying them what they should be paid is what's attractive.
And are you doing anything in particular to attract these future employees, or?
Yeah, I like nothing crazy, but just obviously the branding is so important, regardless whether it's attracting clients or labor. And like Instagram pages, social media, that's been huge for us. We actually one of our Hardscape foremen came from just seeing our Instagram page, and
really,
it's I think that's what that's more for, building a portfolio, and also the labor side of things. Like the guy who's assisting us with sales, he was like, "Oh, I saw your guys' Instagram page. It looks like you guys really know what you're doing. I'd love to be a part of this." And so it really does work. Once we figure that out, it's like, okay, we need to dial down on what we're putting out there. And going back to the beginning of our conversation of acting how you want to be, where you should, your goals are. So I use the example of $10 million business, having what's in place for a $10 million business now will help you get there a lot sooner. So the same with socials and your image. If you're not a pool company yet, but you want to be a pool company, advertising that is only what you do, that is your brand, is the only way to get there.
Makes a lot of sense, and especially that you're seeing the results of it. That's the cool thing, is like it keeps it gives you the motivation to keep going because you're getting the results. Like you're posting to Instagram on a regular basis, you're posting the type of work that you're doing, and you've managed to attract a foreman and a salesperson as a result. So what are you going to do? You're going to keep doing that. You're probably going to even do more of it. As you try to grow, it helps you attract customers. It helps you attract future employees. There's a question that you asked me when I was on your podcast a couple of weeks ago. And the question was something, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of what my thoughts were on labor certification or certification for people entering the industry. Do I think that associations or some level of government or organization should be involved so that there's a level of certification for people so that there is a little bit of a barrier to entry? And I said that I personally don't think that that's necessary. I think that it's the job of the businesses in the space, in our industry, to make it more attractive, to elevate the requirements of what a good employee is, to provide the certification, provide the training. And I think that's the responsibility of us. And as soon as you start getting these other bodies involved, there is the risk of it becoming a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, and not a lot getting done. That's my personal opinion. But I also said on your show, I feel like I should ask you this question. So now I'm asking you, what do you think about that?
I think in an already competitive market, though, like you mentioned, the barrier to entry is so low. Having these guys installing, it puts a bad rap on the whole brand. I think 100%, to get to your question, there needs to be something. There needs to be something in place. And I know brands like TechoBlock are putting in, your guys' training programs are amazing, but having a certification, red tape around that definitely should be in place. And I think these harder times are going to be really good for the guys who are established. They'll be able to make it through no problem, but it'll weed out all of these smaller guys that came in when money was just being printed and given away throughout COVID. But the putting a bad rap on who we are as landscapers and hardscapers is what really bothers me, of guys coming in, not knowing what they're doing, not installing a proper product, not being professional. And it makes everyone look bad. You're a landscaper. This is the general roof we put you under. It shouldn't be like that.
So what are some of the things that you guys do specifically within your business that help counter all that?
So training has been a huge thing for us. Taking the time, investing and in the training, whether it's sending the guys to courses to get them certified, or just using our more skilled guys and experienced guys to sit the guys down and say, hey, we're going to come in on a Saturday or put aside a day to just sit down, do a tailgate talk of like, this is how you properly do this, or this is how this needs to happen. We have very high standards in terms of hiring our foreman. So having that knowledge spread across our whole team is really what's worked for us. So nothing too extensive, to be honest, but that's what we've done at this point.
Is it well planned and documented at this stage, or you're still kind of feeling your way through that process in terms of what really matters? This is what we need to drive home in terms of education and training.
Well documented. So how we've been doing it, just like slideshows, and we have it on like a TV or a computer. And in terms of documentation, that's all that is done.
That's the document.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. I mean, if all the information's on there, there's nothing wrong with that. When I'm saying well documented, I guess I'm asking like the difference between like, let me show you on the job versus, okay, like let me sit down and show you, and then we'll go do it on the job.
Yeah. And I think apps and programs like what LMN's doing with Greenius is definitely going to be game changing for guys to, and especially as an employer when hiring. Like if a guy comes to you and say like, hey, I have this certification or I've completed this series of courses, I think that is really something that's going to make everyone's life easier in the future. To be honest, we haven't tapped into that at all. But also building the culture of guys always wanting to get better and always wanting to learn. Sure, you can do all this training and tailgate talk and your guys are half asleep and they care less. They just want to clock in and clock out. So circling back to the importance of culture and a solid group of guys is definitely important.
Yeah, and the scorecard thing that you mentioned earlier, that's one of the tangible things. Like if you're ambitious and you want to continuously improve and you want to climb the ladder or at least better your income situation, well, that's one of the things that you can do. Pay attention in these meetings so you learn the skills and you perform better, because if you do, then you're bringing in more revenue. If you're bringing in more revenue, I'm happy to pay you more.
Exactly.
It totally makes sense. This episode is brought to you by Proseco. Today's homeowners expect low to no maintenance for their outdoor living space, and Proseco's line of specialty hardscape products are the answer. They're designed to go beyond basic cleaning and protection for pavers, slabs, walls, and coping, and help hardscapers stand out from the competition. Whether you're dealing with stubborn rust or hard water staining, or need lasting protection from water, salt, graffiti, or just everyday wear and tear, Proseco has a wide range of solutions for every challenge. Some of my favorite protectants are Paver Enhancer, which really makes colors rich and vibrant, and Salt Guard, which will protect your client's investment in even the harshest winter climates. Plus, their new adhesive is one of the strongest glues I have ever used. Visit Proseco.com or TechnoBlock.com to learn more and connect with your local rep for samples and job site training opportunities. With Proseco, elevate every stone, every project, every time. So, in running your business on a daily basis here, you've said that a big part of what you're trying to do is build the best company you possibly can for the space that you're in. What I'm curious about is, in terms of your split of time, where does your time and energy go on a daily basis? And it could be, what does a day in the life look like? Or it could be, because it's a seasonal business, there's peaks and valleys. But where does the majority of your time get spent today?
Yeah, I think it's super important for guys and hardscapers to understand their time and what to prioritize on. And it took me a while to, I guess, figure out my schedule and analyze it. And reading and listening to Dan Martell stuff and his book helped me with this. But what I understood is, like, I used to work and burn myself out. And I'm sure I could outwork you if I worked 2 20-hour days, Monday, Tuesday, but come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're going to catch back up and pass me because I'm gassed, right? So once I wrapped my head around that whole thing, I understood the importance of like fitness and health and actually eating. And when it comes to the spring and busy season, that gets neglected with landscapers and contractors in general. So trying, like, optimizing the performance by taking those time and understanding your body, and everyone's different. But it really does outweigh it. Like the time commitment or investment, I guess, whether it's going to the gym, eating properly, is super important to have you perform and be on your A game when it matters. So that's been one thing to me. And then those fewer hours, they are fewer hours, but you get way more done. You're way more productive. And to me, it looks like it's probably 7 a.m. to the evening, focusing on the business and analyzing and working on the business, not just putting out fires all day.
So what are you working on? And not to discount everything you just said, because I think it's super important, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
it does get neglected.
Question, so I kind of rambled off. But.
No, you're good.
So what?
I mean, it is very true, though. Yeah. But I just want to close the statement I'm making. It is very true that, like, if you don't prioritize your own health and well-being, you cannot perform at the optimal level. Or at least you cannot do so over a long period of time consistently. And ultimately, the mark of any true professional that excels in their role is they can perform at a high level for a long time consistently. that's really what separates the greats from everyone else. So you have to have all of the things, all the environmental factors that contribute to that optimal level. You need to make sure that you're controlling those too, as much as the ones that are in your control, because otherwise it becomes exceptionally difficult. You're already, like you said, in a gladiator sport trying to run a business, but now you're stacking the odds against yourself by not sleeping properly, not eating properly, not taking care of yourself, getting stressed out like crazy. And then you're trying to solve all the world's problems at the same time. Like it's just not going to work. But back to the question, which was, how do you break down your time? Because like you said, from 7 a.m. to the evening, you're working on the business. What does on the business mean? How does a day break down in terms of, like, let's say, time blocks?
Yeah. So the four things for me, and I don't know where I got this from, but leads, leadership, liquidity within the business, and also labor. And they all four of those things feed into each other, and making sure they all are running properly. And not only that, but also optimizing those few things. So leadership, if there's poor leadership, your labor is not going to be optimized. You're not going to be efficient at fulfilling the leads you get. And if you're not fulfilling the leads that you're bringing in, there's going to be no liquidity, no money. So when there's problems in the business, I feel there's always one of those four things you can point to them and be like, okay, we need to work on. I'm trying to think of an example, but just like the sloppiness and loose ends and the small bleeding, whether it's spending too much or I don't know, the small things that get overlooked in the day to day is what I spend a lot of the time on. And then also, like, meeting with clients, getting feedback on how we can improve the systems and processes that our guys are following day to day. And I want it to be as simplified as possible and systemized as possible, so anyone can come in and fulfill, whether it's a foreman or operation manager. And I know it's almost an impossible task, but doing it, like that's a big part of my time as well, documenting things. And if you're not able to improve if you're not measuring. So going back to like LMN time cards, and but documenting processes and systems is big for me.
So I just wanted to go a little deeper on the question, or the point that you said, you asked that your customers a lot of questions on how you can improve on the processes, or I guess the experience that they have with you. What do those questions look like or sound like?
Their experience, like we know our product is amazing, and that's like no problem, but it's regardless, things are going to come up. There's going to be supply issues. There's going to be weather delays. There's going to be men not showing up or equipment breakdowns. So how we deal with that and go about that, the customer relations side of things, is what is important for me to dial in, tap into, and improve on, and then document how we're improving it. So I don't know if we're rescheduling and not notifying a client, or like that was an issue before. We would just move, and the client didn't know what was happening. Are they coming today? It might maybe be raining. Who knows?
Yeah. So what does that mean? So like you, for example, that one. So that means that you're taking time in the office and you're writing out like a SOP, a standard operating procedure on, if a schedule needs to be changed, this is what we have to do. We have to document the change, original date, new date, reasons why, communicate to the client, confirm that communication was understood, address any concerns client has, make sure other projects that are affected by this change are also notified. Like there's all, I'm just going off the top of my head, but is it something like that?
Bang on. Yeah. And like lots of Google Docs, and having our Google Drive, it can get out of hand at some points, but like having it as organized as possible so guys can figure out where those Google Docs are. And they do get super in depth, as you just briefly broke down an example. But you can only imagine how many little things need to be in there. And sure, our guys are super competent and doesn't need to be broken down that simple, but I feel it's important too, because whether it's them training someone else or them getting replaced is what these are.
Well, that's it. And that's why, like, sometimes it seems like, yeah, okay, well, it's great. You just went through 10 steps because I just got to call someone and say, hey, we're going to be there tomorrow instead of today. But if you're trying to do, like you said, where I can bring a new person in, or like, tomorrow morning, or not tomorrow morning, but let's say 5 years from now, your business is 5 times the size it is, and you have the opportunity to acquire 2 crews with their equipment and everything because a guy is retiring and he doesn't have a succession plan for his business. So you can acquire crews and a salesperson, let's say hypothetically. Wouldn't it be nice to be like, okay, well, welcome to the team. Here's how we do things. When we have this situation come up, this is what you do. And I know it can sound a little overkill, but basically what I'm hearing you say is something goes wrong in the daily operations of the business, whether it's on site or it's with a customer or it's in a planning or a purchase or whatever stage. If something goes wrong, you're figuring out why did it go wrong, what needs to change, and make sure that is written down and communicated out to everyone. Okay, guys, we had this situation happen. It didn't go well because of X. Moving forward, we're going to do things this way. Please refer to this document if you don't remember this the next time you're faced with this situation.
100%. And it holds everyone accountable to make sure the stuff is getting done, because there's going to be a stage and a point in a business where you're not going to be able to reach out and communicate to everyone. So like an example of that is like my operations guy is me and him talk. That's it. And he talks with the foremans. That's it. He doesn't talk with every single crew member. The foremans are responsible and held accountable for their crew. So an example of a system we have in place, like 4 kind of model from LMN, they have a checklist. They have 6 questions is how we've done it of what's important at the end of the day. One of those questions is what's the attendance of your crew for the next day? And instead of being on the phone with 4 different crews at the end of every day, it's all in a Google Sheet. It takes them 2 seconds to read through, look over, and whatever needs tended to gets tended to. If it's if nothing needs to change, then nothing needs to change. And then also what's worked for us is having like we call it a client job cycle doc, and it's about 7 pages long. And from the initial like when the client calls in to the very end of when they're getting invoiced, what does that look like, and step by step, and who's responsible, and as in detail as possible, like you mentioned.
So do you have visibility over, because you have 4 crews, so you have 4 projects going at any given moment, or you might be merging them together on bigger projects. So it might not necessarily be true. That's four jobs, but do you have visibility over like the stage that each one is in? And how many stages does a project have?
Yeah, so every project's different on the size of it, obviously, but I do, and how we do our progress payments for, like, say for example, hardscape job, it's based on progress. So like I don't know, 25% is due once the retaining wall is done, then another 10% once the fire pit's installed or whatever. And it was tough bridging that gap between operations and then also the ladies in the office, making sure invoices got sent. So what we did is a progress doc of having each one, like the 10%, the 20%, every like broken down into line items, and that the progress payments are going to get sent out. And then everyone knows the stage of where that job is at and what's holding that stage up and what is yet to be done.
Has that helped with cash flow because you're collecting on the determined schedule, and it's not like, oh shoot, I forgot to run out and get the check for that project. I should have done that 2 weeks ago.
100%. And we're by no means perfect. We're still refining all of these. These are just what's getting us started, really, and what we've thrown in place. And I say to my team all the time, just get it started and do it shitty, and then we'll refine it as we go.
At least you get the ball rolling. Like you're working on it. If you're waiting for the perfect plan, well, then you're never going to get started.
Perfect time's never going to happen.
That's it. So you mentioned, you mentioned Mark Bradley for one, but I'm sure there are other people that you tap for advice or mentorship. What's what exactly, like, do you know what you're looking for when you're looking for a mentor, or you're looking for some kind of guide, or is it just you're looking at who they are or what they've achieved, and that's kind of an indicator for you, like, okay, maybe they don't have all the answers, but they've at least walked down the path I'm planning to go down, and they can probably have most of the answers for me. Like, how are you filtering it out to be like, this is who I'm going to ask for information? Because there's so many people offering so much information online that, it's easy to get misled.
Yeah. Not like, it's never really specific, just honestly, whoever I can talk to or network with or learn from, and just shut up and let them talk. There's always something that can be learned from someone's experiences and some of their hard knocks. And to be honest, that's why we started the podcast, of like capturing these valuable points or lessons for other guys just starting out to learn from as well, but not only myself. So yeah, just I feel there's always something to learn. I haven't been on this earth too long, and most of these guys have a few years on me, so there always seems to be something.
And what's the biggest piece of advice you got from one of these guys that had a massive impact on either you personally or your business?
That's a hard question. I think the biggest thing for me has been learning to say no, and figuring out what you want, and how valuable your time really is, and to stop fucking around and do what's going to get you to where you want to go, and all the other noise and fluffy stuff can wait.
How do you come to that conclusion? Like, how do you know really what you need to say no to? Because like you said, like, especially when you're new in business, it's tempting to say yes to anything because I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. So like, what is the filter, your decision-making filter that leads to it's a yes or it's a no? Like, what tells you this is a no?
Like understanding in like what the vision is for 2, 3, 4, 5 years out, and if this is something that we need to either learn or figure out or do to get us there, great. If starting a roofing company is not going to help us get there, then it's not going to happen. No, right? Like, is this going to matter and help us in a year's time, 2 years time? Great, let's do it. If not, then no.
So you need a really clear definition of what your goals are, and you have to have a fairly solid plan on how you're going to get there, because that ultimately becomes the guide of yes or no. Is this aligned with that, or is it not?
Fairly
and if
aligned.
It's not,
hey, go ahead.
Yeah, if it's not, is it the scenic route to get there? And maybe it also gets me there. I just didn't think about it. Or is it really, no, this is going somewhere completely different? At which point you're at a fork in the road, and either you want to reassess your goal and plan, or it's just straight up a no. But if you don't know where you're trying to be 1 year, 2 year, 5 years from now, it's very difficult to be able to say no.
Yeah. And it's understood and needs to be understood, not knowing and having a very, very blurry vision, or not knowing what's happening, or being unsure as a business owner. I feel that's very, very normal, and needs to come to terms with being comfortable with that feeling, because 95% of people, it drives them nuts if they don't know a paycheck is coming in 2 weeks, right? So you need to be comfortable with sure that uncertainty is going to be there. And sometimes you're right, there's going to be a fork in the road, and you're going to have to make that decision, and just to what your knowledge is, making the best decision based on the longer term, not just the short term pleasure. And we talk about going pro and being the very best we can be. It all starts with the little things. And like, you look at Tom Brady, all the small things that add up to be so good and world class like him. Like, I don't think he's practicing his hockey shot at all. I don't think that's on the agenda, right? He's learned to say no to that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's really what the saying no kind of also entails. It's being all in on the vision that you're trying to execute, and like nothing else. There is no room for anything else. If you really want to make that happen, that's what you got to look at. I'm sure there are other ways to go about it, but like if you want to be as driven as possible, and you have a very clear vision of where you think you can take your business, and that's how you feel that you can get there, and you've mapped out the steps to the best of your knowledge, and you found yourself a guide or two or three that you can bounce ideas off of and kind of see like, okay, well, what do you think? What would you do if you were in my shoes? What did you do when you were in my shoes? It becomes a lot easier. And I think that's one of the big keys to, things like this, where you get to talk to people, like the podcast that you're doing as well, where you get to, straight up just ask people what they think. Like that's part of the show. That's what it is. And I think that's what gives you a lot of the opportunities to have knowledge and acquire it faster than if you're just going at it by yourself. That's what can give someone a competitive edge, which is something that clearly you've been exploiting.
And
if I, go ahead.
Like just shortly of figuring out like what you want is important. And like, if you want to spend 50% of your time with your family and you understand that you're an average business is what might come to that. Maybe some guys are wanting that. And at the stage of life where they're at, maybe that is a priority, but to me, it's not something I'd be able to relate to.
Well, there you go. So, I guess, I'll ask you one last question, and it's kind of a catch-all, but I think it's still relevant. In terms of you're talking to a young contractor or someone who's looking to get into the business, who might be stumbling across this episode and hearing your story and saying, well, if he can do it, I can do it. What would be your biggest piece of advice or your biggest recommendation of what to do or what not to do, like before even getting started? Or I can reframe the question and say, what do you know today that you would have told yourself in the beginning to make yourself have more of an advantage or be further ahead than where you are today?
I feel it goes back to our whole conversation of what this has been about, of like figuring out what you actually want to do, right? Like we started out as it's a low barrier to entry of just cutting lawns. And if the goal is design, build, and bigger projects and custom, and that's what we wanted to do, then advertise and work your way and build your portfolio in that sector, not just starting to keep you busy. I would say starting slower, spend your marketing on in building your brand around what you want to be, short-term and long-term. And if in our example of a design build company, that's what it should have been from the start, not lawn mowing and spring cleanups and then slowly working our way up of how it's been. And we've learned through harder knocks of opening eyes to, you spend, when you cut grass all day, you spend 40% of your time in the truck, and just stuff like that is all what's eye-opening to me. So number one, figuring that out, but to help you figure that out, find people who have already done what you've done and learn from them, talk to them, pick their brain, and figure out how they've got to where they are.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Charlie, if people want to reach out to you, want to pick your brain a little bit, want to learn more about you or about your business, what are the best ways to get in touch with you?
Yeah, we're all over social media. So the Charlie Kerrigan, you'll find us, my personal page, and then the V.I.L landscaping, you'll be able to check out all across social medias for whatever else. And then our podcast is the Hard Lessons Podcast. Some great chats on there.
Yeah, there's been some awesome ones. I've listened to quite a few of the episodes. So
awesome.
You asked some good questions, and you've secured some pretty solid guests too. So it's a good one. It's a diverse crowd, which is nice.
It's been a blast doing them, and I really appreciate you having me on here, Alex. It's great to chat.
No worries. Well, I guess that's it for this week, guys. Charlie, thank you very much for joining me. And until next time, everyone, work hard, pave harder, and we'll see you next week on the Hardscape Growth Show. You've been listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Each episode is all about taking the next step in running your business, so make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on your favorite podcast player. And if you're finding this information to be useful, help others in your position discover us by giving us a star rating and leaving a comment. We'll see you next week.